I never believed that one single sound could change the way I see the world. But that night, deep in the woods, I learned how wrong I was. You think the silence of the forest is peaceful? Crickets singing, branches swaying in the wind, maybe the faint call of an owl. But silence can also be dangerous. Silence can make you hear things you weren't supposed to hear. When I tell you this story, I don't expect you to believe me right away. Most people don't. They laugh or they say I must have imagined it. But I know what I heard, and I know what I saw, and ever since that night, the memory refuses to let me go. I was only a teenager, but old enough to know the difference between fear and imagination. Old enough to remember every detail that still keeps me awake at night. What started as an ordinary hunting trip turned into the darkest night of my life. One that still follows me whenever I step into the woods. So if you think you're ready, listen closely. Because once you hear what I heard, you'll never think of the forest the same way again. The trip was supposed to be simple. Just me, my dad, and my grandpa heading back to the ranch we'd been visiting for years. That place was almost like a second home to me. I had grown up there, learned how to track animals, how to stay quiet in the brush, how to respect the land. Every trip carried memories of laughter by the fire and the kind of stories you never forget. The ranch itself wasn't fancy. It stretched wide, with dense woods wrapping around an old field that seemed to glow silver under the moonlight. The shack at the campsite was small, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, so most of the time we camped in tents near the tree line. To anyone else, it might have seemed isolated, maybe even uncomfortable. But for us, that was part of the charm. There was something about being surrounded by miles of forest that made you feel alive, even when it was quiet, especially when it was quiet. Out there, far from the noise of town, every sound mattered. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the grass, could mean something. And on that trip, I would learn just how much those sounds could change everything. That first night felt ordinary at the start. We set up camp, unpacked our gear, and sat around the fire while my grandpa told the kind of stories he loved to repeat. The flames crackled, sparks floated into the dark sky, and for a while everything felt safe, just like it always had. But then it happened. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a sound cut through the night. At first I thought it was an animal, a coyote maybe, but the longer it echoed, the more I realized it wasn't. It was sharper, stretched, and sickeningly human, like a voice trying to scream but twisting into something unnatural. The firelight flickered across our faces and I saw the fear in everyone's eyes. My grandpa froze mid-sentence. My dad turned his head so fast you could hear the snap of his neck. No one moved. No one spoke. For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath with us. Finally, the scream faded into silence, leaving nothing but the distant rustle of leaves. But the damage was already done. The woods no longer felt like the same place. That night, the ranch stopped being familiar and became something else entirely. After that scream, none of us could relax. We tried to laugh it off, telling ourselves it was just some animal passing through, maybe a bobcat. But deep down, I think we all knew better. My dad kept glancing at the tree line, and my grandpa stayed quieter than usual, his eyes fixed on the dark woods as if waiting for something else to happen. When it was finally time to sleep, I crawled into the tent with my flashlight and my rifle close at hand. I told myself I'd be fine, but every crack of a branch outside made my chest tighten. Even with my eyes shut, I couldn't stop hearing that scream replaying in my head. Before dawn, my grandpa woke me and dropped me off near the blind. The night was heavy, the kind of darkness that makes every step feel louder than it should. He didn't wait long, just pointed me toward the ladder and drove off with the ATV. That was the way he was, strong, unshaken, expecting me to handle myself. But as I climbed the ladder in that silent blackness, one thought refused to leave me. What if the scream hadn't been just an accident of nature? What if it had been something watching us all along? The blind was suffocating in its silence. Every rustle, every distant snap of a twig made my heart pound like a drum. I tried to calm myself, telling myself it was just the forest settling, but I knew better. Then I saw it. A figure stood in the trail, shrouded in darkness, barely recognizable as human. Its limbs were twisted, angles unnatural, moving in ways that no living person could. the head tilted unnervingly, jerking back and forth, as though the creature was watching everything at once. I raised my rifle, hands shaking, and aimed. It turned toward me, and even though I couldn't see a face, I felt its gaze. Hollow, cold, unforgiving. Then came the scream, a sound so raw, so inhuman, it made my blood run cold. I fired, one shot, then another, until the clip was empty. The figure stumbled but didn't fall. Its movements grew faster, unnatural, almost mocking. Panic seized me. I realized too late that I was trapped in the blind, alone, and completely exposed. The scream tore through the woods again, closer this time. I froze as it came straight at the blind. My fingers clawed at the ladder, trying to escape, but it was too late. The last thing I remember before everything went black was its distorted face, impossibly close, and the sensation of being lifted off the ground by something that should not exist. When I woke, the blind was empty. The figure had vanished as if it had never been there, leaving only the shaking air and a silence heavier than anything I'd ever known. My body ached. My hands were scraped from clawing at the ladder, and my heart refused to slow down. I could still hear its scream echoing in my mind, a sound that no forest could ever hide. I climbed down slowly, terrified of what I might see in the shadows. The trail was empty, not a sign of life or blood, not a single footprint. It was as if the forest itself had swallowed everything whole. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt rooted in fear. Since that night, I've never been able to see the woods the same way. Hunting trips that were once peaceful now feel like walking into a trap. I can't explain what I saw, and I can't explain how it survived the gunfire, or why it chose me. Even now, I feel it watching whenever I step near the tree line. Sometimes I think I hear the faintest rustle, or a low, almost human noise that sends chills down my spine. I know I was lucky to escape with my life, but luck doesn't erase what I saw, and I don't think I'll ever be safe in the forest again. Even after all these years, the memory refuses to fade. Every time I think I've put that night behind me, I hear it again. The scream, the rustle of leaves, the unnatural presence that followed me in the dark. The forest is no longer a place of peace or adventure. It is a place of waiting, of watching, of something that exists just beyond the edge of sight. I tell this story not to scare but to warn. The woods hold more than animals, more than silence. Sometimes the shadows carry a life of their own, and sometimes you are not alone, even when you think you are. Every hunting trip now is a reminder of that night. I never go alone, I never leave the path. And yet deep down I know that whatever it was, it is still out there, patient, hungry, and waiting for the next person to wander too far into the dark. So the next time you hear a scream in the forest, remember this. Some things aren't meant to be seen, and some nights are meant to stay in your nightmares forever.